Hey Bugs, Super Beetle here. Welcome to the first ever Bug Buddies podcast, and my guest today, Daniel Moon. We just wrapped up an incredible, close to a year rivalry, and I wanted to get his perspective on things. So part one is all about his life, how he started in the business, him coming up in the business, what got him in, and the little detour he took in the middle. And then part two, for my Patreon only subscribers at the After Dark level, is all about the retrospect of our rivalry, plus we go over our third and final no disqualification match there. So I thank you for listening or watching, whatever you're doing, and enjoy the first episode of the Bug Buddies podcast. Daniel Moon.
Hi.
This is the first Bug Buddies podcast.
It is kind of a milestone.
It's, I mean, hopefully. We really hope so. So I chose you for this because we have quite a bit of history that has just kind of rounded out. And we'll talk about that more in part two. But I kind of want to know where your history starts. Tell me, who is Daniel Moon for everybody that doesn't know?
Well, man, it's funny because it kind of starts where you came from. Daniel Moon started being developed at the School of Hard Knocks under Jesse Hernandez. And I believe the school was at Riverside at the time. I'm not sure if it still is. I'm doing a terrible job.
San Bernardino is where the school is.
Yeah. So if you're in the Inland Empire, San Bernardino, you go to the School of Hard Knocks, and they'll train you right. And I had stumbled upon to one of the Covina shows as I grew up in Covina, and then harassed some of the wrestlers to letting me know how I could become a wrestler. And they eventually just like, oh, we'll talk to Jesse. And he told me about all the school stuff. And my parents wouldn't let me start training until after I finished high school. So the moment I finished high school, I enrolled, and I had like a crappy summer job at Cold Stone where I saved up enough to pay for the training. And I felt like I took to it very quickly, because in my time in high school, I was in the wrestling team. So I had like a referee's position to lock up. I already had that down. I had some of the rhythms of the basics in me. Like I wasn't really scared to take a fall or anything, because, you know, there's double leg takedowns and stuff in amateur wrestling, and then you just kind of elevate that with body slams and power bombs in professional wrestling.
Wait, so how old were you when you came to your first DWF show?
Probably, maybe 16. Yeah, it was somewhere like sophomore year of high school or junior year of high school. It might be 15, 16 maybe.
Okay, so how far into this, how far into your wrestling obsession, let's say, was this? Were you just start watching, or?
No, I started watching like when I was in elementary school. Some 6 years old. I just remember one day, like all my friends in recess were talking about guys I've never heard of, because at the time we were talking about Power Rangers and Mortal Kombat. And then all of a sudden the conversation spun out, and then Goldberg and Sting, and like, who are these people? Are these Mortal Kombat characters? And they sounded like Mortal Kombat characters to me.
So you're telling me you were a WCW kid?
Oh yeah, definitely. Goldberg's this big bald jack guy, and Sting is this like long hair, pale face, badass. And as soon as I kind of got the chance to watch, I was hooked. And then one of my, I don't remember what the first match that I watched was, but my first wrestling memory, it was Ric Flair making his entrance against Macho Man. Macho Man was the babyface at the time, and Ric Flair came out with robes, and it was WCW. So he had like women escort and fireworks. And then I remember this was so funny. the referee looked just like a mini Ric Flair at the time. Charles Robinson was doing a heel referee thing with him.
Yeah, Lil Nate.
Yeah, exactly. Little Nate. Yeah. And it just, the whole deck was stacked against Macho Man. And I was like, how is this guy ever going to win? And I was hooked.
So, you said you started training EWF, which is funny because we haven't even crossed paths until like the last year.
Oh, no, yeah.
Of wrestling. So take me from starting to train at EWF to now where you train at MPW. What was Millennium Pro Wrestling here in Chatsworth for people that don't know? What's the journey of that?
Okay, so I started training at EWF, and the guys that were in class regularly at the time were Jeremy Yeager, Chris Cadillac, Dropkick Murphy. He changed his name to Uday
Uclea.
Yes, and then RJ Ruiz.
Okay.
So that was like our class. And then it's funny, like right towards the end of my class, there was this kid that started showing up with his dad. And I remember being partly, I forgot. Fidel was also in that class too. But Fidel didn't like me.
Fidel's in most of those classes.
But this little boy started showing up to class. I remember part of me was like super jealous. Oh man, his parents let him train so early. And
I feel like I know who this is.
This kid West.
He's Request.
Yeah. So he's been training forever. So like the joke was that he's going to be a 20-year pro by the time he's 30. And like that might be the case.
And it's still the case. Yeah, it's not a joke anymore. That's reality.
Yeah, that's wild. So then stuff at home started kind of changing a little bit, and I started to get part of it like a little more anxious about like, I want to start wrestling already, and home situation was changing. And I eventually decided, well, wrestling's not going anywhere. Maybe it's not for me. And it was fun training, so like I'll put that aside. And then I enlisted in the military.
Okay.
And I served in the Air Force for 4 years. That was cool. That was fun. That was crazy.
What'd you do in the Air Force?
What was that?
What'd you do in the Air Force?
I was an airplane mechanic.
Oh,
on the KC-135 straddle tanker. It is a big flying gas station. It refuels the fighter jets.
I'm learning like all new things about how smart you are now.
No, not at all.
Because the Air Force is like I took the ASVAB. I was going to join. I was going to join, and then they disqualified me because of my heart attack when I was 17. And like the Air Force was like the top tier of the ASVAB. For the record, I got a really good score on the ASVAB. I got 96.
Yeah.
But I was going into the Army only because the building for my recruiter's office, I didn't know what I wanted to do with life. I was like, let me just walk straight in. The building of my recruiter's office was a square building, and each side had a door on it for each of the different branches of the military. Yeah. And the door facing the parking lot was the Army door. So I walked in the first door. If you would have walked around, there's the Marines, there's the Navy, there's the Air Force. And,
that's super funny.
Yep, and I never saw anyone else in that office besides the Army guys until the ASVAB scores came in, and like the Air Force had come to that office and were like, "Hey, so you got this score? You can be with us and leave these guys behind, right?" I was like, "No, that's cool."
That's so funny. Well, here's sort of like a little side tangent on my recruitment story. My friend at the time was meeting with a recruiter, and he has made up his mind that he was going to enlist and join. And one day he just asked for a ride to the recruiter's office for one of his meetings, kind of keeping in touch. And like a dummy, I walked into the office with him instead of just sitting in my car, doing whatever. And like, it was like delivered on a silver platter. And
so you straight up got a referral bonus and everything.
No. He got the referral bonus.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He brought you in like, hey, got another person to give me a ride.
Well, here's the super funny part is I ended up shipping out before him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. They were asking me, so what's your plan with life? And I was like, well, I don't got one. And they eventually told me about all the benefits about serving and, the experience of being in the military. And it seemed attractive for a young man with no direction.
Oh,
so
100%.
I told
like,
him.
what, a $30,000 signing bonus? Absolutely, sign me up.
And they asked me what kind of job did I want to do in the Air Force. And like a dummy, I said, well, we'll get me out of here the fastest. So they pulled out
tomorrow.
They pulled out their list of hard jobs, and they're like, airplane mechanic. They run 24-hour operations around the world. You'll definitely have work.
They're like, we can get you now.
Yeah. So like 2 weeks later, and I feel horrible saying this, on Mother's Day,
wow,
was the last day I spent at home. And then the next Monday, I was off to boot camp. So that's a horrible thing that I did with my mom.
So it only took you 2 weeks from like walking in that door to get shipped out?
Yeah, that's it. When you tell them I want out of here as fast as possible, they comply.
They're all about it. They're like, yes, no time to change his mind.
Exactly, yeah. So
if you can stay here tonight, sure.
Unless you find a friend you can sleep with, he could give you a ride.
So where did you work out of when you were enlisted?
I was stationed in Fairchild Air Force Base in Spokane, Washington.
Oh, okay.
And that's the big refueler base over in Washington. California has two, but the only one I can remember right now is Vandenberg. Oh, and the other one is March. March is in Riverside, actually.
Everything's in Riverside to you.
Right, yeah, it's just a lot of land. So spent my time in Washington, and then routinely deployed to Kyrgyzstan. And if you ask me to point it out on the map, I probably do a really bad job of it.
You're like, just drop me there. I don't know where it is.
Yeah, it's very close to Russia. I know that. But that was my deployment site. Anyways, got out, and then briefly kind of pursued a career in nursing and just the medical field in general, because I had some time to think, okay, what do I really want to do? And the nursing field seemed like a safe option, and I decided to start off as a nursing assistant to kind of get my teeth into it, the profession, really understand this is something I want to commit my GI Bill into. Mm-hmm. So I spent a year as a nurse assistant, and then started attending school to go to West Coast University and work on a bachelor's for nursing. And this time, I slowly realized that nursing was just for me. I personally can't handle the emotional toll of watching people I'm taking care of slowly die.
Yeah, that sounds tough just listening to it, honestly.
It is rough. And like, man, the part that really gets me is when you know that we have life-saving treatment for somebody, but their insurance won't pay for it.
Yeah.
Like that, my hands are tied. I can't do anything for you because it's illegal for me to do something for you, and you're too broke to live. Like, that's awful. I don't want to be part of that system.
Yeah.
So I decided I don't want to do that anymore. I dropped out, and I just started working at a restaurant. And that time, my girlfriend really started to kind of push me to like, oh, well, you should really pursue your passion. Like, do something you like. You spent so much time of your life doing stuff that you thought you had to, but never really loved. And coincidentally, one of my friends was invited to go to a wrestling show, and he himself wasn't a fan. His friend was on the show.
Okay.
And he wanted someone to go with. And he decided to call me up like, hey, Daniel, I know you're a big wrestling fan. My friend's wrestling at a show, and I want to go support him, but I don't want to go alone. You want to go? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And it was a Millennium Pro Wrestling show over in Moore Park at the time. and this was the first live show had seen in a couple of years. I watched a couple of WWE shows live while I was in Washington whenever they toured there, but I hadn't seen live wrestling in a few years, and I hadn't actively been watching wrestling at the time, so it kind of just like, oh, it's all back.
Like, you got the bug again.
Exactly. And I remember looking at the guys and thinking, I'm not a little boy anymore. Like, they're not that much taller than me. They're not that much more bigger than me. And I
Put on some muscle in the military.
Yeah, exactly. I was a skinny little boy before. Not saying I'm not now. I can certainly use more weight. But I decided, you know what? I'm gonna ask if they have a school, and I'm gonna chase this. I'm gonna see where this goes. And I ended up talking to Seth Skyfire, who was the head trainer at the time. And he told me the schedule about all the classes that they have, and it's super welcoming environment. And there was no not doing this for me.
You were just, from that point on, all speed.
Oh yeah. Like, okay, like we're gonna do this, and we're gonna do it.
Get me in the ring the fastest. Get me in
exactly. Yeah. So started training there for a bit. Eventually, people started to take notice enough to have the confidence in me to put me in front of people on a live show. And from there, it's just been...
How long did that take?
For me, I feel like I cheated because I had at least a year's worth of training with EWF.
Yeah.
And that MPW, from the moment I started to the moment I was in front of people, was probably like 3 months.
Okay, that is cheating. I'll take that.
It's totally cheating. When you show up and you don't need to be taught how to roll or bump or
I've done this before.
Yeah, or run the ropes. Like, none of the, you got your basics. You just kind of need to brushing up on what goes where.
Yep, easy. So this was how long ago?
This was how long ago? This was 2016, I believe.
Okay, so 4 years later now. You're
yeah.
Millennials. What was that transition like, I guess? How do you decide to team up with two other guys that they're basically brothers? Like, from the start, they're a natural team. How did you get mixed up with that?
Well, Danny had already started training by the time I joined MPW. He was I think every promotion kind of has every kind of a school system has their golden boy of the moment.
Okay.
And
I'm gonna tell him that Danny called you a flash in the pan.
Well, no, like for example, I imagine that when Andy was still training, he was probably the golden boy at the moment, right?
He was leading every class.
Yeah, so that's sort of the same class leader position that Danny had.
Okay.
And I immediately kind of like looked up to him because I was like, oh, that's the guy I want to be. So kind of saw how he carried himself and just how he trained and everything. And we became friends right off the bat. And then maybe a year later, Brendan started getting the bug. No pun intended.
Taken. Don't worry.
He was going to every show regularly, and then began training. And I think maybe 6 months of training, he debuted.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and in that time, any opportunity that we had to work with each other, we jumped at. And eventually, we ran through the matchups that we can. Like, I wrestled Brendan a bunch of times, I wrestled Danny a bunch of times, and Danny and Brendan wrestled each other a bunch of times. And if we wanted to really continue working without exhausting, our matchups, the logical step is, well, then let's be a team. And I think just the timing of it all worked out best in that manner, because once we came together, we were all ready to be a unit rather than individuals. I think had we teamed up from the beginning, I know for sure that I would have been way too selfish on during the kind of the economy of the time of the match. I would want to do this, and this, and then there's not a whole lot left for everybody else. Because that's just kind of like Green Boy syndrome, right?
Yeah, 100%. I like that though. So, just on that topic, what's changed in your mind from going to, okay, I'm a singles wrestler, I gotta have these either 5-6 minute matches or 15-20 minute matches on my own, to, okay, now I have 2 other people to look out for in the ring to make sure we all look good?
I've always liked tag team wrestling, and it was kind of a conversation that I had with Jeremy Yeager years ago. Mm-hmm. We were talking about like, oh, would you ever want to be in a tag team? It's funny that he asked that question because he then went on to be in the A-list, one of like EWF's like biggest tag teams.
Yep.
And I said, yeah, because it's kind of part of the whole experience. And then the words that he said kind of always stuck with me. He said that it makes you a more complete wrestler to have a run in a team. And I thought, well, yeah, because it's a whole subgenre that you would just not get any exposure in if you never have a run as a team. You know, team wrestling and singles wrestling is so different. And
I get that. It's 2 completely different categories.
Exactly. So like, why? It's like spending your whole life only playing one genre of music, and you know you never really mastered music.
Yeah.
So I've always kind of had the want to do it, and it just worked out that it happened to be with the guys that I train with the most and you know the closest friends with in wrestling.
So at this point in your career, do you like singles wrestling, tag team wrestling, or trio wrestling better?
Oh man, I thought this was gonna be a hard question to answer because like, oh, between singles and tag team, that's so hard. But you put in trios as a whole different category. That's absolutely my favorite.
Why is that?
Because I think we're really good at it. And I think it's just the right balance of almost like you have toys you're playing with. Mm-hmm. And this is 6 pieces is about the most pieces I could have and still have everybody look good and everything makes sense. Anything more than that starts becoming too messy.
So no 8-mans, no 10-mans.
I think that's where I mean, it's definitely possible, but I'm not good enough for it yet. Yeah, and we, Danny, Brendan, and myself all have a similar way of approaching matches and thinking of what works and what doesn't work, and we're all really good at compromising, which I think is probably the secret ingredient to anything. We all know which hill any one of us is willing to die on, and when someone reaches the point of, oh, I want to really do this, or I don't really want to do that, the other two, okay, well, he feels about it like this for a certain reason, maybe we'll give it to him and it'll be better at the end. And it usually is. I don't recall a time where there's been a compromise about something that someone really felt strongly about and it wasn't for the overall better effect of the match.
Do you find it easier now than when you guys started to kind of reel each other in? Because we were talking about that Green Boy syndrome where like I got to do all my stuff. My part of the match is 10 minutes long. Was that an easy compromise at the start to be like, all right, we need to split this up into shorter parts now?
Okay, so when we were a green team, I think we made we were a selfish team, I would say.
Okay.
And not in the sense of like me and Danny or me and Brendan would want to, oh, I want to do more stuff and then he then gets mad and he wants to do more stuff. It's not, okay, we want to do double teams because that's kind of one of the luxuries of being in a team. You get to do double teams, and you will never ever get to do double teams in singles matches.
Yep.
So we would have too many double teams, if that makes any sense. And I think that took away from matches, and like not necessarily just we would do all the double teams. It's just they ended up meaning less in the match, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
All right, Moon, we got some questions to ask from people on Instagram and on Patreon. So I'm going to kind of throw these at you rapid fire a little bit, okay?
All right.
This is from Kyle MT19. The top 5 moves that you love that you can't do.
Oh man, that I love
this is a really good question.
Oh dang. Well, they're all like bonkers moves. Ricochet's double moonsault. I can't do that.
One.
The 630. Let's see. What else? What else can't I do?
It doesn't have to all be flips. You can come up with something else.
Oh, what? What? How about that I don't do?
That works.
Jeez, I don't do the pedigree. I think that's a beautiful move. I love the pedigree. Ripcord anything I don't do because it's too popular, but I always think it's cool.
Because everybody does it.
Exactly. Let's see. I'm really trying to stick to the premise and something that I can't do. I'm trying to think of stuff that I'm afraid of.
For me, destroyers, I guess. I can't do destroyers, but I'm. That's really cool.
I guess the gorilla press. I can't do that.
Yep,
that's not a flip.
That too. Can't do that to most people.
Yeah.
Let's see. Baby Child's Wildflower says, favorite move you got to do during a match?
Favorite move I got to do during a match?
I guess it can be like a move you regularly do or just any?
Man. I don't do them very often, but whenever I do a destroyer, I was all like, the inner child in me is like, P. Williams, yes. And doing the 450 is always super fun. Super fun.
Yeah. Because you're just in there for so long. You're in the air for so long. That's my thing. It's like, every time, like, power bombs hurt, don't get me wrong. But every time I'm in the air, I'm like, I am up here for so long.
Getting picked up is scary.
Eric Kish asks, what's the closest call you've had with running into a misplaced camera person?
Oh, man. Okay. This is kind of funny because it happened at Championship Wrestling from Hollywood.
Okay.
I don't really even remember the match. I just remember that Sean was Shane. Oh shoot. He was by our corner, and I had just tagged down, and he was trying to get a really good shot of the babyface inside the ring selling. Mm-hmm. And as I was getting out pretty fast, I almost just straight booted the camera out of his arm.
And that's a cut to your paycheck at Championship Wrestling from Hollywood.
Oh yeah, so I think that was probably the closest call because all camera equipment is expensive, but I'm sure television
grade television equipment would probably be a little more expensive. Yeah,
and then in front of all the boys are watching from a monitor backstage, opposed to an indie show where it might be like 2 people peeking out of a window.
Yeah, you would not hear the end of it.
Yeah, so I would say that's the closest call.
Danny Divine Pro asks, why is Daniel Moon so handsome?
I would actually answer. Have a backup question. Why did Brendan hack into Danny's profile to ask that question?
Ooh, that's a good one. I bet he didn't think I was going to ask that too. Evan P500 says, what's your worst injury to date?
Worst injury? I think it has to be when I dislocated one of my ribs.
What's the story with that?
I had just took a Shining Wizard from Brendan earlier in the match, and I thought it was clever to give him a Shining Wizard, but reverse the way Adam Cole does it from the back of the head. Yeah, it was before he started doing this. Like I never seen it, so like I never had an example how to do it. So I just kind of just went for it, and I landed super awkwardly. In the video, you can't even tell that anything happened. But
so you did it to yourself?
Yeah, I just landed weird. It was a freak thing.
How long was this?
This was probably 3 years ago, like 1 year into wrestling.
Oh, okay. How long were you out for?
Oh man, this is so irresponsible. I was officially out for a week, and then I had really light duty for the rest because I was in a big program heading into a triple threat with. I didn't want to give up my spot. I didn't want to give up my spot. It was a great opportunity. But then I was in just tag matches leading up to a big main event triple threat with the MPW champion and then the owner of the company and then me who trying to prove that I belong.
With your broken rib.
Yeah.
Last one. Chandra Catastrophe asks, how do you think wrestling will change once bans are lifted and shows can start again? This is something we've talked about a little bit in the current climate.
I think that the enthusiasm from the crowd's going to be there for sure. Mm-hmm. There's going to be an appetite for live entertainment in general. So I think the atmospheres at wrestling shows are going to be electric for that first month, I think. I think a lot of the boys are excited and they're itching to get back in the ring. So I think you're really going to see everyone's A game out there. And, there's a bunch of we're in the business of a lot of creatives. So I think we may see some innovative stuff out there being shown. I think that wrestling is definitely going to make a comeback. Wrestling is not going to go anywhere. I think that it's going to come back almost aggressively at the independent level because of a lot of hungry guys. Mm-hmm. As far as the business aspect, I really can't speak to how many promotions are going to be around after, but I still think that the appetite for wrestling is there. And I feel
there's going to be a lot of concessions that are going to have to be made by promotions coming back. And I think in any other situation that fans would question it, but I think whatever a promotion comes back with now and says, hey, we have to do this for everyone's safety, people are going to understand.
Yeah. And I think if anything, wrestling fans are resilient. They are willing to wait out and see how a story unfolds. And when it comes to more real world stuff, I think they will understand if, you can't get that close in the merch table or there's got to be an empty seat in between you and your buddy at a show or something. The wrestling community is genuinely one of the most loving and supportive communities I've ever had an opportunity or privilege to be part of. So I think wrestling is going to be okay no matter kind of what new guidelines are in place.
Yep. Well, Moon, thank you for coming on the first episode of Buggies, but he is not done. He will be back for part 2. I just want to wrap it up for everyone that's only watching part 1. Plug yourself. Where can they find you?
Oh my gosh, no! That's hard. Let me look up on my social media.
We'll pause it, don't worry. Jeopardy music will be playing right now.
All right, you can follow me on Twitter at DanielMoon_pro and follow me on Instagram at DanielMoon_pro. I can't remember that.
Hey, at least it's the same thing for both of them.
Yeah.
I've met so many people that are like, oh yeah, it's like XXX324, and then my Instagram is something completely different. So you're on the right track. Don't worry.
Yeah.
And that was part 1. Thank you so much for watching on YouTube or listening if you're listening through podcast services, because that was really fast that we got that up. Maybe. We'll see. But yeah, part 2 is exclusively on my Patreon, patreon.com/realsuperbeetle, where we go through an entire retrospective of our big feud and we watch together match 3, our no disqualification match from this past February. Also, if you're watching this in May, don't forget that we're still giving away the Black Mass. You've still got time to enter, about a week actually, to enter to win the Black Mass. All you gotta do is subscribe to patreon.com/realsuperbeetle. Whatever tier you pick, whatever dollar amount it is, that's the amount of raffle tickets you get entered into the raffle. And then at the end of May, we will put all your names in a bag and we will draw out one lucky winner. So thank you so much, Bugs, for watching. Make sure to go follow Daniel Moon. Follow me wherever at Real Super Beetle on Instagram and Twitter if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're watching this on Patreon, I will see you over for part 2. Thanks, Bugs. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much to all my patrons for supporting me over on patreon.com/realsuperbeetle. Those would be Alan Williams, Amanda Padilla, Angel Ba, Asylum Addiction, Bennett Lacey, Charlotte Passingham, Cody Swanson, Colby Christian, Denise Halleck, Donna Backer, Eddie Villegas, Elizabeth Carley, Erickson, Gemma, James, Jolioli, Caden Mars, Kevin Chenga, Latones, Martel Scantos, Nathan Ragland, Paul Endelina, RHP, Ryan Williams, Stephen Clark, Thomas Simpson, Tony G, Valerie Bartlett, and Xavier Paz. Thank you all so much for your support. I could not do this without you, and I'm so excited to keep on doing it.